Hi, it's Michael from the Oilers Live podcast. Let me tell you about Seat Giant. You can find them at seatgiant.ca. We have got a discount for Oilers Live listeners. Just go into Seat Giant and use the discount code Oilers Live, and you get 5% off your ticket purchase. Seat Giant is a great place to find tickets for the events that you want to go see, and it's all in Canadian funds. So remember, go to seatgiant.ca.
Oilers Live Podcast.
Welcome to the Oilers Live podcast. I've got as my guest Kelly from Beer League Heroes on again. Welcome back to the show, Kelly.
Hey, thanks. It's not like you had a choice or anything.
No, behind the scenes, by the way, I asked about 10 different people, and I got Kelly.
Yeah, because I was number 10.
It was number 10. No, thanks for joining short notice tonight. Obviously, some big news in Oilers world today with the announcement that Sekera just underwent successful Achilles surgery. First off, was there any word? I didn't see any word on when he injured it. Like, how long did the Oilers know? Do you know? Or I haven't heard anything, so maybe you don't know.
That's a good question. I guess the news kind of broke on the Hockey's Future forums, and then there's a guy that tweeted about a day ago now that he saw Sekera coming off a plane in a wheelchair and walking boot. And they just reported it, whatever. However,
so a legit insider?
I don't know, just some random dude. Yes, no Bosco, I tell you that.
Yeah.
But if he had surgery in the last couple of days, then he must have ruptured it previous to that a few days. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, it's obviously been a few days. I think what's important to me and Sean SPR tweeted about it today, right? Like, you know, what does this mean in terms of contract for Nurse, and how long, you know, did Nurse's agent know? Right? I mean, it's depending. I mean, if they knew for a week, right? I mean, is that why Nurse didn't have a contract this week? How important that becomes to the Nurse contract and what it means. You know, agents obviously talk. They're going to help each other out, right?
Yeah. As far as I have been told, that there's a verbal agreement between Nurse and the team already in place, and that Nurse is on vacation, so they're not signing it until he gets back. Will this Sekera injury change that? It might, you know, the negotiations might evolve a little bit, right? They may, instead of saying, hey, okay, remember that old deal? Well, let's talk about a long-term deal now. Or maybe they have multiple options on the table that have been verbally agreed to. If that was the case, it would be pretty shitty of the agent to say, hey, how about that Sekera news? let's get talking contract again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it changes much in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have no in on the whole contract situation, so I couldn't say for sure. I mean, we've heard anywhere from $2.5 to $5 million in a bridge. I suspect somewhere in between. Maybe you've heard different or otherwise. Yeah, I mean, what does this mean? A long-term deal is potential, right? I mean, that's the I guess that's the question, right? I mean, if it is a bridge deal, what have you heard otherwise? Like, have you heard anything bridge long-term?
All I've heard is that the it's probably like for 2 years, 2.5, 3 million ish, and you know, that's about it. I think like he can't go on a long-term deal right now because yes, the Oilers have about, I think they're just a shade under $5 million in cap space. So Nurse could get signed for under that, but it wouldn't leave him anything going into the year. Even if Sekera goes on LTIR, it's only for the duration of the season. And once the season ends, the Oilers have to be cap compliant again. And so if Sekera comes off LTIR when the season ends, then that's that his $5.5 million gets lumped back onto their.
Well, it's not even the whole season, right? It's when he comes off, right?
Right. So I don't think he's going to come off this season, though.
Yeah,
that's my thing. Like he's not Erik Karlsson, right? I mean,
yeah.
The difference between those two injuries is that Karlsson had his cut, and Sekera's his Achilles ruptured, right? So there's a big difference in the recovery time there, and how
if you take a whole season, right?
Yeah.
Conceivably, right? You take that season away, as long as they're cap compliant for the season. I think you worry about where you are at the end of next season. Do you know what I mean? Like if you have that extra 5.5, you use it, and if the end of next season comes and you're not cap compliant anymore, then you got to make some choices.
Yeah,
plus, there is some hope that at some point, I mean, maybe the cap goes up again. Who knows? I mean, it won't go up that much, I don't think. Not for another maybe couple seasons, but.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree that if they have the cap space, that they have to use it. Now, how they find a player that fills that cap space is kind of the larger issue, right? If they trade, then they're going to be trading some needed assets down the line, right?
Yeah,
they could trade Lucic, but he's still a top. Like I don't really care what anyone says. He's still a top six forward, or at very little, he's a middle six forward, and he still contributes. Or they're dealing out Yamamoto or Puljujarvi or Jones or Baer, and the Oilers are just getting to that point where their pipeline is flowing nicely from junior to the AHL to the NHL, and they could trade for Falk. That's possible, but what are they trading for Falk? Unless they're trading like B-level prospects and draft picks like Buffalo did, I don't really like it as much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So for those of you that are listening in tonight or tomorrow, you can go on to beerleagueheroes.com. It's Kelly's made a post today talking about what the Oilers' options are. We're going to talk a little bit about that today, starting with, of course, the option maybe of a trade. So you think Falk... what about, if you talk trade, right? If you did say, and I hate bringing up Lucic because I honestly think it would be a huge mistake for the Oilers to consider trading Lucic. But, if there's some type of trade available, obviously you're giving some salary away, plus you have 5.5. Maybe you could get a good D-man. It would cause you, I think, all sorts of problems in the next season. Does it matter short term, though? Right? I mean, if you got rid of a little bit of salary, now I'm looking up and down their salary here. Who would you trade? Right? And who would be attractive in the market? You could trade conceivably Benning, right?
You could.
If there's somebody, a willing trading partner for him.
I think there'd be a market for Benning for sure. That would leave the Oilers with one, proven right-handed shooting defenseman if they traded him out and didn't bring another right-hander in. You could trade Kazian if you wanted.
Yep.
He makes $2 million.
Yeah, and somebody's going to be riding the pine during the on the forwards, right?
Yeah, sure. That's Pontus Aberg's probably the closest guy right now who's going to be riding the pine.
Yeah, I'd say. Yeah.
You could trade Lucic out and bring a defenseman in, and then give Rick Nash like $5 million to play the year. Something like that, and then go shopping next summer for a left winger, or promote Tyler Benson, or something like this. But that team's getting awfully young, awfully quick doing that.
Yeah. So I think I would say, and if it was me making the call, I'd have a hard time. I guess if I was Chiarelli, I'd probably make some calls around the league, see who's available. If you had somebody in mind, I'm sure they've got a couple guys in mind that they might have talked to earlier on, see if there's a trade to be made. I would suggest that there's probably not. We don't have the tools, and somebody's got to be looking on the other side for who we're willing to give away. So my first thought is, a trade's not really available. There's just not the player we need, right? In terms of trade right now that really replaces what Sekera brought to the team 2 years ago when we were a playoff team.
Yeah, right.
What's your thought on that?
The way I don't think the trade's as hard to make. Like in my post, I said, Boston has 8 NHL defensemen on their roster right now, and they're looking to get rid of, 1 or 2 of them, right? And I mentioned Kevin Miller, and I mentioned Adam McQuaid because they're sub $3 million defensemen, and they both kind of bring skill sets that the Oilers could more or less use. Chiarelli's got history with them, and I don't think the cost would be that high. Who else did I say? I think maybe Philly. You might be able to get Radko Gudas for cheap, just because he's got a history of getting suspended for games that go into the double digits. Mm-hmm. But he's got a nice shot. He's gritty. He can move the puck. He hits. I don't know. He's a nice addition, I think. When we're talking about Sekera, we're talking about a guy that's probably only going to put up 30 points, right? He's not hard in the corners. He's more cerebral defenseman. So it really depends.
2 years ago, he brought more to the Oilers than points, right? He was a calming presence on the back end, right? He ate up good minutes. I think he sheltered some of the other players, right? We still have some guys that are learning the ropes in this league, and I think Sekera was the right guy to be there a couple of years ago. Now, of course, last year was unfortunate. So, I look at a guy like Adam McQuaid, and while he's a bit more of a veteran presence and has played some years in the NHL, I think we'd be missing out on the points area with him. He's never been a huge point producer, right? I know that. I guess it would open up some more salary though if you made a legit trade for him, right? And you traded one of the guys out and brought him in, and then you still had 5.5. Maybe bring somebody in like a Sabiza or something on a PTO if you made that trade.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I don't think Edmonton was going to be completely reliant on Sekera this year anyhow, and I wonder where he would have lined up in the defense now that kind of Nurse has kind of jumped him, I feel, a little bit. And you got Clefbaum already as the team's kind of top left-handed defenseman. So what happens at that point? Is he a third-pairing defenseman in 2018? Personally, I've got them going with Clefbaum and Larson, Nurse, and his partner is questioned for me, and Sekera and Russell before Sekera is injured, right? So I guess that would make Benning Nurse's partner. So I don't see Sekera moving up or down unless there's an injury or poor play. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, my feeling on Sekera, I wouldn't put him down as a third pairing guy, but maybe second pairing with Nurse. My real though hope for him this year, obviously the 30 points was a watermark in terms of where I'd like to have seen him points wise, and that might be. I don't think we would see him ever get back to that 40-point area at 32. But to get in, some decent minutes a game, as I said, be that veteran calming presence. I think he would have been good for Nurse this year. So that's my big concern there. Let's talk a little bit about the second part of your post is promoting from within. Obviously, there's some guys coming in this year. You've put them all in your post. Joel Persson, who is Swedish league, right? Where's he playing?
That's right.
Yeah. So obviously he's on loan out there this year. If he wasn't to come and play for the Oilers, they'd have him at RFA status next year, I believe. But they could recall him. What's your thoughts there? And let's just chat about promoting from within. Who would be your, first thought on who might get that role?
Well, like I was talking about before, if I saw Sekera as a third pairing defender, then promoting from within the organization wouldn't be as problematic as if I was looking at him as a second pairing defenseman, right? Because the Oilers don't have any defenders currently not on the NHL roster that would be suitable for a second pairing role yet.
Yeah.
But let's say Nurse and Benning are the second pair. And Russell's going to pay the third pair then. Who would you line up with Russell to play on that pair? And you could put Kevin Gravel. He was signed to be the 7D. Yeah. And I haven't seen enough of the guy to know. I think he's a big guy. He's got a shot and he can skate. And in today's NHL, that's a plus, right? Mm-hmm. For me, I personally want someone with a little more defensive acumen. I like William Lagesson in this scenario because he's decent defensively. I think he could play NHL. Maybe you toss it up between Lagesson and Keegan Lowe then. I think Lagesson might be a better skater and have a better skill set than Lowe. But Lowe showed last year that he didn't, it wasn't that bad. He could compete at the NHL level, and he was gritty and he physical against the other teams, and that's fine with me. Legesson's really like a player in the vein of Nicholas Charmelson, and I think putting him with Russell would probably be a little better than putting Bouchard or Ethan Baer or Caleb Jones with Russell just because Russell likes to allow the zone entry and I think he lets a few more shots on the goal when he's on the ice. Legesson's how would you say? He likes to get in front of a shot, so maybe between him and Russell, the puck would never make the net. Yeah. What do you think?
My thought on it, right? I mean, if we're just talking about promoting from within, right, would be, I think it would all. Obviously, it comes down to how the players do in camp, but I think I would immediately cross out Evan Bouchard. Not because I don't think he could play. I'm not one of the Oilers Twitter types that saw the one game and thought he wasn't ready. You know what? I watched the Orr versus Cherry game again the other day, and he was outstanding in that game. Bouchard's a hell of a player, so he might look like he's ready. My big concern with one of my concerns is we rush him now that Sekera's out. So I'm hoping they send him down. Ethan Baer, I mean, we saw him last year, obviously, at the end of the season. Defensively, he was a little bit suspect at times, but he's got some skills that translate well to the NHL, and I think my thing with Ethan Baer is when you come into camp, it's going to tell a lot about this player, right? He's played some games in the show, and now he's going to have a chance, to prove, especially with Sekera going out, that he deserves to be that guy. And if anybody, is the guy, right? It should be him. He should be, given that opportunity. He came up last year. He did all right. Of course, it was, garbage time, but, he showed he wanted to play. What I like about Ethan Baer is his compete level reminds me a lot of Nurse, right? Even when Nurse is, even on a bad game, you always know you're going to get the best out of Nurse, right? Like he's just going to give it everything he's got, even if he's having a bad game. I found Ethan Baer to be much the same. He didn't just give up and give in. And I'm really hoping, out of camp, he's got some confidence. And, if Sekera's out, maybe this is a chance for him to prove himself. I'd like to see him stay up. Legason, I just don't know. I've never watched him really. So I know a little bit about him, reading some of the scouting reports and that he's still, I guess Baer's not any older, but we haven't seen Legason yet. He's still a young guy. I'd like to see him in the AHL at least to start the season, right? And so there, to me, lies sort of the biggest problem is we've got a number of guys that are too young, in my mind, to start the season with the Oilers. Person might be the best from all of the video that I've seen. He might be the guy that's most ready, most mature, right, and been through, what you need to be through to make it in the NHL. But we've not seen him play in North America yet. So, is he coming to camp? Like, was that always the plan?
I don't think he is. I think he's staying in Sweden.
Yeah, I didn't think he was coming to camp, but I wonder if this changes that. And, is that part of the recall? I'd be curious of how those rules work, right?
I would say it is part of the recall if they say come to camp. I think it's just like kind of like a college kid.
Yeah.
If you're coming to camp, then you've been recalled from your loan. I'm not sure if they can put him back. They could re-loan him out again, or what the rules are there. But he's the oldest out of the group.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly.
Yeah, no, he's 24.
Yeah. So he's kind of right in there, but yeah, I would probably like him to spend one more season over in Sweden and see if that rise to prominence is real, or it's just kind of a fleeting thing over the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, because I guess that's the big thing with him, right? Is he, he was a nobody just 2 seasons ago, right? And and then he's had one successful season. I think the Oilers made a reasonable bet on him not to come and play. See what another season came, and then they have him as an RFA, and they can choose to sign him then. But if they can at least get him into camp and see how he performs, I might be willing to do that. When the more we talk about this, though, I just not a single one of these players replaces Sekera, not even close. Right. In my mind, I don't. What's your thought on that? I mean, to me, this is if we do this, if we go this route, if Chiarelli goes this route, where he's hoping somebody else picks up that slack, is that not the same problem we had at the beginning of last season?
Well, it's exactly the same problem we would have had at the beginning of last season, I think difference. Yeah, I don't even know if there's even a difference.
No difference.
None, zero.
In fact, with Sekera, if he's on long-term injured reserve, which we're all assuming he's going to be, then it's the identical situation. Extra cap space and no Sekera.
And he's got a free agent to re-sign.
Yeah.
Well, last year was last year. Who did he give the money to last year? Russell,
Draisaitl, and then there were a couple.
Oh, Draisaitl, yeah.
But yeah, so
he'll give it. I don't. Yeah. Anyways,
but yeah. So this is identical to last year. So did you think Chiarelli learn anything? If he did, you got to imagine if not trade. And you and I think maybe differ on what's available in a trade situation. I don't think there's really in my mind, I can't see a reasonable trade to be made. What about free agent? The one that's obviously popular with a lot of folks on Twitter is Brandon Davidson. I think, again, I go back to, we got to at least try to replace Sekera. Love Davidson. I mean, he's a fan favorite, but he's not a replacement. So your thoughts on who, and we can go to your article there. You've got a few names. What's your number one pick free agent wise?
Oh, free agent wise. I don't know if I had I don't know if I have a pick off the free agent pile, because that's pretty bare bones, isn't it?
What about Emelin? What do you think? I
was thinking about him after I wrote the article, kind of sitting on the sofa and wondering, because he's played some serious minutes from his time in Montreal, and then he was kind of fringe in Nashville, right? But he's very physical. I don't know about his puck moving or shooting or anything like that, really, but I know he wouldn't make it easy for the other team at all. And how many of those guys do the Oilers have right now that just make it a pain in the ass to be on the ice against? That's not replacing Sekera's skill set, mind you. And if their special teams isn't great next year, that Emelin can do more damage than good there. I think if they're going to go to the free agent market, they're probably just going to go something quiet. Who do you go with? Davidson's fine, but he's not Sekera, right? He's, you're going to be rotating defensemen in that number 6 spot until you find a guy that fits, right? And that's not a bad plan either, depending on the play of said defenseman who's playing that night, be it Davidson if you sign him, or Gravel or Baer or someone from the minors. But is Toby Enstrom a guy that might replace Sekera's skill set?
Yeah, I never really thought about Enstrom. I don't even think I realized he was available. He's a little bit older, obviously. He's had some bouts of decent offense, obviously, in the league. We're not expecting. I guess you're not expecting a lot if you go with an older player, but you want him to play the full season. He's used to Western Conference. Yeah, I don't imagine he'd be the wrong guy. He's not overly big though, right?
No, he's a tiny guy. He's kind of probably smaller than OV2, but kind of similar in play style, maybe.
I wonder, what's your thought on Lucas Ibiza? I mean, what I'm curious about, and I asked this when I had Shane on the podcast. What's the word on him? I mean, why has he not been signed yet? He had a decent start to the season last year, and then he got injured. And then he didn't. They never really slotted him in the playoffs. And I can't figure out the reason. I mean, I've searched all over. Obviously, it was a career year last year, the start to the season. But still, like, he played. He played. 12 total games. I guess he played 12, but he wasn't getting good minutes in the playoffs, and it was after injury. So I don't think you expect a ton from a guy like that. I'm surprised that Vegas didn't pick him back up. Does that have you heard anything at all on that?
I haven't heard anything on him either. He's only 28. I think Strudwick was pulling for him on Gregor's show tonight. I think it reminds me of Schmid, to be honest. I don't know if he's as gritty as Schmid, but if we're looking for just like just an average D-man, not flashy, kind of just pulls his weight each night, I think that's not bad. He was making $4 million last year, and that might be something that's driving teams away, that he might be asking for more money than teams are willing to pay. I mean,
maybe that's the big part, especially coming off of a season where he missed almost half of it, if not more than half. Yeah, more than half by injury. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. He got picked up in the expansion draft, so Vancouver didn't want him.
He had some fans in Vancouver. It's not like he was hated there. He wasn't. I wouldn't say he was loved, but when I went searching for, this is actually over a week ago, I kind of started to get curious about him and why nobody had picked him up. So I was hoping maybe I could find something somewhere. You might be right. I mean, the big reason might just be he's asking too much, but maybe now's the time. There's an opportunity. Again, the challenge for me is still comes back to, we've got to find a way to, at the very least, sort of get most of the way there in replacing what Sekera brought to the team 2 years ago. And, it's late in the season to be picking up decent free agents, but when I think we need some offense. I think this might be too early for me in terms of I haven't had a chance to have a good look, but maybe we do need to look the trade route, and maybe Chiarelli needs to make a trade. I just hope he doesn't do what he did last year and think that the team can get by. I don't want to be one of the guys that's on the anti-Chiarelli train, but I might be if he doesn't do anything.
Yeah, right. Well, let's go through a list of guys, and you give me we'll give each other a yes or no on this, right? So good old Bosco there. He said he heard the Oilers had interest in Kevin Bieksa.
Yeah.
Do you have interest in him?
I'd be all right with Bieksa. He's like a Kessler. You hate the guy, right? Like I absolutely hate Bieksa playing against him. I might be all right with him if we found, like, if one of those guys that we mentioned from within were to step up and we had a really good, in between guy on as a 7th D. I mean, maybe it's Gravel, but I'd be all right with Bieksa. Yeah.
So Bieksa in kind of a Matt Hendricks role.
Yeah.
So we already talked about Savisa. We're kind of on the fence with him. That was Strudwick's. And good old Rich Cloutier brought up Slava Voinov. What's your opinion on Slava Voinov?
I'd probably steer clear of that. I've just never been.
Well, he's like, the U.S. let him back in to the States. So I think he is he's okay, but he's got to go through something with NHL protocol and stuff like that. So there's still some hoops to jump through.
I guess
for that guy.
Is that a unnecessary distraction, right? I mean, the Oilers don't need that. I don't know. I mean, my first thought on him is it's just, I don't like the guy personally, just based on history. Yeah. Anyway, I'd stay away from him.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. All right, fair enough. Let's see. We talk about Davidson? He's
a fan favorite. There's no doubt. I mean, if you could, it might might push Gravel out, but if Davidson was available to come in and be in that seventh spot, I mean, him and Benning would be fighting for that sort of sixth and final spot in my mind.
Okay. Paul Martin, 37 years old.
Nope. Too old.
No. Jason Garrison, big shot, 33 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching him that age, right? Like, you're really on the decline, right? As far as defensemen go, and any player in the NHL, right? And I would say no to him. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he played all year in the AHL last year.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking, like, we know him best probably from when he played in Vancouver.
Florida.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was in Florida too before that.
All right. Kyle Quincy.
Kyle Quincy. I don't know enough about.
In Detroit. Yeah. Nothing. Didn't do anything spectacular. Signed a big free agent contract. About it.
Yeah. And he's a fair size. He didn't play much last year, 18 games.
Yeah, I don't know if he's better than Davidson or Gravel, to be honest.
Yeah, like, I think, if we're going to talk about these types of guys, right? I mean, my initial thought would be, you might as well just sign Davidson, right? Like, we know what we're getting. I think you're going through the Matheson's list there. I would consider.
There's not a name on that. Like, every name is on that list.
I'd consider Cody Franson.
Would you?
You know what? I'm not like. I don't know. I like Franson. Like, I think, he, he's a big guy. He's, as long as you're not expecting too much of him, right? And if you could sign him on a good contract, I'd be all right with Franson.
Yeah, the thing with Franson, he had that 1 year in Toronto, I think, where he's just pounding goals in from the point left and right. And then he got traded to Nashville after that, I think, if I recall correctly. And then he kind of like lost his mojo a little bit and hasn't regained it since then. But to me, he's like a right-handed Davidson, sans the physicality. And I don't think his boots are very good. Maybe they're not quite at the NHL level anymore. But if we're just signing a guy for his offense or for a big shot, then I like Ethan Baer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you put it that way, I mean, my curiosity would be, and if you look at Franson's totals, right? He goes Toronto, he does really well. And then, he plays in Nashville and he, doesn't do much. He goes to Buffalo, which is, a wasteland of hockey in those years, right? He still, he almost put up 20 points. He's never had like a ton of goals, right? I guess he played the majority of the year in the AHL last year. Looks like he had decent numbers, though.
Yeah, put up nice numbers.
Did well in the playoffs.
Yeah, very respectable in the playoffs and in the AHL on the whole for him last season. He's 31.
You could probably get him at a good deal.
Probably could.
Right?
I think, you know what? It looks like after he left Toronto, for whatever reason, he might have lost the trust of his coaches or something like that, because he wasn't, and he was in injury, or he couldn't get into the lineup, one of the two, in that time, because his point totals declined significantly. So, you might have a point with France, but Sean would probably kick us in the nuts if we started talking about adding him to the team.
Is he he's not a big fan?
No, because it's the first guy that everybody jumps to when the Oilers need a defenseman. Oh, right-handed? Oh, cheap? Oh, nice fancies? Why not? Cody Franson.
Nice. That's right. Sean loves the fancies.
Yeah, so I personally, unless they make a deal, they're not going to replace Sekera. They're going to, they're just going to have to shore things up so that, defensively, they're not weaker. I don't know how they'll do that. But unless they trade something, I don't think they're going to get a Sekera replacement.
So let's put this then into consideration. You just recently did a number of posts around where you thought the Canadian teams were going to place.
Yeah, it sucks now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you think this moves Edmonton up, or I mean down? Obviously, you don't think it moves them up the list, or I hope you don't. But you got them
because down beneath Edmonton was. Let me see if I remember this right. I think it was Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa.
Yeah. I'm looking at it right now.
Who the hell am I missing?
But yeah, your order was Winnipeg, Calgary, Toronto, Edmonton, Vancouver, Montreal, Ottawa.
Yeah, there. So, at this point, it depends on who they sign. Their defense will still be on par with Toronto, I believe. But still better than Ottawa, Vancouver, and Montreal. But the forwards, see, that list was all based like, if everything clicks for the forwards, they could surpass all the teams above them, right? Mm-hmm. If Lucic is a 40 to 50 point guy, if Puljujarvi is a 40 to 50 point guy, if Yamamoto comes up and puts in 40 points, or Ratty puts up 40 points and clicks, what if Draisaitl gets 80 points, McDavid's 110 points, Nugent-Hopkins is like 75 points? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If all those things come together, and the PK and the power play, then the Oilers' offense, in my opinion, will surpass all those other teams. But the problem is that's like that's a hard bet to make. Yeah, and somebody's gonna decline next year where others will trend upwards. I just don't know who to put, whose name to put in which category.
So let's switch gears. Let's talk about your list, because as I had talked on your, I think I commented on the Calgary one, which, by the way, I commented on your Calgary post, and was to because I'm not that big on Calgary. And some of that I'm going to have to say is based largely on the fact that I just don't like Calgary.
I don't like Calgary either.
Yeah, but I think that I think they're overhyped right now. Kristen Alyssa did a little funny post there when the NHL did their top 20 defensemen, and none of the Calgary D were on there, and quoted Calgary fans says we've got the best defenseman in the league.
Not even by a mile.
Yeah, I don't know that in my mind, James Neal is that big of a difference maker. I look up and down their lineup, and I've never been sold on Backlund and Frolik. I think Tkachuk made them look good last year. Tkachuk is and Tkachuk's kind of the big deal there. And I think Johnny Gaudreau, I'm not a big fan of his. I am a big fan. It's funny because I just saw somebody tweet the other day. They thought Monahan was the most overrated player, but I'm a big fan of Sean Monahan. I take him on my team, and Lindholm and Bennett. I mean, Lindholm to me is a big question mark, and Bennett, well, I would probably wouldn't even have him in my starting lineup. So, I'm not really big on the Flames. I watched them a lot, so it's not that I don't know the team. I actually they're probably the team that I watched the second most past the Oilers. Because as you know, my favorite team is anybody who's playing the Flames. So I love to watch those games. So and then we could talk about the defense as much as you want. I mean, but I wouldn't take them at 2. You were big on them at 2, even over Toronto.
I like it. The whole list is predicated on kind of everything going right for every team, right?
Yeah.
And I like Calgary's offensive depth a little better than I like Toronto's. I see more question marks in Toronto than I do in Calgary, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
Pardon me?
I'm just agreeing or asking.
Okay. Sorry. No. At the same time you said that, a bloody car drove by on the freeway. So, I think that Kachuk Backlund Frolik line is tight. I think it's one of the better defensive lines that can provide offense in the league. Lindholm was just breaking out last year after kind of a career that's been underwhelming up until then. There's a little bit of fluidity in that top 9. And I don't think Bennett's going to be as shit next year as he was last year. Their defense is not great, but it's not amazing either, right? I kind of put it more or less on par with Edmonton's. Yeah. They have 5 NHL defensemen. Edmonton has 5 NHL defensemen.
I said before.
Pardon me. Yeah. Arguably. Depending how you look at it, right? But none of those guys would get released tomorrow or sent to the AHL. Is what I'm looking at there. To me, their softest spot is their goaltending, and that's what'll sink the team. In my opinion, Gillies isn't ready to be a number 1, and Smith, man, the guy's got groins like frozen rubber bands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and he gets hot and cold. He's kind of like Craig Anderson, right? If he's hot, man, is he hard to beat. But he's older now. I think he's 36. I can't see those hot streaks lasting as long. And maybe the cold streaks lasting a little longer. But to me, I like Jankowski. I think he's good for another 30 or 40 points. They marinated him really well. Derek Ryan is a very nice 4C. I don't know about Lazar and whoever else they're going to put on the wing with. Lazar, maybe Czarnik from that kid from Boston that Edmonton was looking at last year. It's like, if it stays healthy, it's a solid lineup. It's going to be a good Battle of Alberta this year. There's, they don't have a lot of prospects on their team, that you have to worry about. I don't know. I just like them a little more in Toronto because I think Toronto's got a few more question marks in their offense. I'm not sure about Kapanen. I don't know about this Andreas Jonsson, like the guys that did really well in the AHL and they came up and were serviceable. But how are they going to do next year? Par Lindholm, who the hell is that? That's their 4C right now. Tyler Ennis hasn't done anything since he was in Buffalo. I do like Connor Brown, and I'm not sure if he's really worthy of a fourth line role. And but their top, Kadri, Tavares, Marner, Nylander, Matthews, Marlowe, and Hyman, that's tight, and that exceptional high-end talent. But what happens when those guys aren't on the ice? How is Toronto going to do when a team lines up against that? Ron Hainsey, can he play every penalty for the whole year again? Zaitsev is he gonna be a 30-point D man, or is he gonna be another like 16-point?
So this
D-man?
may or may not be
What's
popular with Oilers fans. I think there was obviously that post by Bar Down earlier this year on the top centers in the league with Matthews and Tavares, taking what, second spot or first spot? I don't something ridiculous. I think they're, obviously two very talented centers. I do think McDavid and Draisaitl are, if not the best 1-2 center line, in the league. They're 1 or 2 behind Crosby and Malkin. And Matthews and Tavares is great. But if you go down the depth chart onto 3, I would take, the Kadri, Tavares, Matthews on those 3 lines. I hate Kadri, and generally any player that I really hate, I hate for a reason, which means I'd love to have him on the team, right? Like if Kadri became available, would you take him? Yeah, for sure I would. Would I take him over Ryan Strome?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm Strome's growing on me, but
sure.
He's no Kadri, that's for sure. So from the center standpoint, and then what happens on the wings there, I think in the bottom 6 sometimes, you get a little bit of lucky, maybe a little bit of shuffling. I don't know. I think that while I don't think they can start planning the Stanley Cup in Toronto, certainly the Tavares signing is great news for them. They're going to have trouble on D. There's, in my mind, that's where that team falls apart. I don't think Edmonton's quite there yet. I would still take, depending now with the Sekera news. My thought was Edmonton and Calgary were kind of tied for that 3-4 spot. I might still take Edmonton over Calgary just based on the top end talent, and the defense being very similar. But Winnipeg. I think you and I can completely agree that they just look too good, right?
Yeah, they look real good. I think, like, going back to Toronto for a second, they've been trending up consistently, and they haven't had any like real, negative hits the last few years. They might be due for one of their big guys to go down. Matthews was hurt a little bit last year, wasn't he? Or he was sick or something.
He played. I think he ended up with 60 games or whatever. Or 63 games. So
that's I guess maybe that's maybe they did get dinged up a little bit. But like when I look at Edmonton, I'm still questioning Ratty. How many points is Puljujarvi going to get? How much impact will Reader make? Is Drake Caggiula going to get any better production-wise? I like the defense. I like the goaltending. But I think the forward's still a year away from being like completely solid. Yeah. There's way too many question marks with the Oilers forwards. You're right. That's my feeling. I just think that you can't discount Connor McDavid. Obviously, no matter how we shape that top line, it's just going to be a top line, right? They will always put up points. You put Ty Ratty up there. Obviously, he's only played 40 games in the NHL, I think, in or around there. You could put Caggiula up there, maybe whatever. Some conversation was had this week about, I guess it was from the, about how many wingers he's been playing with, right? It'd be nice, I guess, if Ratty could stick, what does that mean for that line if, and we keep Nuge up there? What does that mean for that line going forward? Is it, does that mean bigger and better things for Connor this year? So that, in terms of that line and how it looks, I think
That's good. The big question mark, obviously, and we've got all these Finns on Twitter. How do you say, who's the one from New York? What's her name?
Let me see if I can get it right. Kultakutri.
Yeah, so I've always been curious, and maybe she can tweet to us if she's listening to the episode. Does she actually know Puljärvi, or is she? Just the. It seems the Finns all seem to know each other.
It's a small country, right?
Yeah.
Tight. She knows them. She went and visited him in the summertime.
Oh, right on. Yeah, so I think that's pretty cool. I mean, she's obviously a big fan, and she's given me some insights into his into him in terms of which I've kind of followed up and had a look at. How he's developed historically, and it has taken him. If you look at his in what he's done, it's usually taken him a couple of years to advance in every level, to develop, and I think that's just the kind of player he is, right? So I believe he'll have. I'm hesitant to say breakout season, but I think he'll be better and continue to get better. Draisaitl, I think, is going to get even better, and not enough has been talked about how I think we can expect like a really good power play this year. I mean, I think everybody, I know that people have said it. I just don't know if people have thought enough about this. If we have, a middle of the line power play, what does that mean for this team? Like, I think that's huge, right?
Yeah, it's definitely an increase in points when it comes to the standings, as well as the PK. Whatever happened with the PK last year, that's unbelievable. And when McLellan took over, it went back to being like a top 5 NHL PK. So whatever he did was magic and should probably stick with it. Trent Yanni coming in is going to help that regard too, and they worked together in San Jose many years ago, so yeah, they do have a previous working relationship. I just, even with the question marks, I can't see the Oilers being as bad this year as they were last year. It's inconceivable to me unless injuries just decimate the team again.
Yeah, and it would have to be like some major injuries, and cross our fingers on that one. But I think back to what started this, my reason for reaching out to you to do the podcast tonight. The Sekera injury. It's just my biggest concern here still is now I think we really see, in my mind, this is the one time where, I can say to myself, look, Chiarelli's been through this. Did he learn anything? And if he didn't, then I might actually be supremely disappointed. I know there's a lot of folks out there in Oilers land that are very anti-Chiarelli. He might be one of the most hated GMs in the league. It's hard to say. I'm not one of those guys. I think he's done some good things, not all bad. I'm not going to defend everything he's done, obviously, but if he doesn't do anything in this situation and just decides to let it ride, and it kicks us in the ass, well, I think that's all on him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the summer of Peter, isn't it? The NHL.com did their season preview for the Oilers. I think it was last week, maybe it was this week.
No, I missed that one.
And they said it was Chiarelli too cautious this summer. Well, you might say yes, you might say no, but we're gonna find out by the time Game 1 comes around, whether he's been too cautious or not, because he's going to have to do something to address the Sekera hole. His job is on the line this year.
Yeah, and last year we were in this. I mean, we talked about this earlier. We were in this same situation. Now would be a good time to take a break, or either call it a night, or I guess in your case, the day.
Yeah, right. Lunchtime.
You got
yay,
the little one
degrees.
up and ready. We can return back. Hopefully, I don't know what's your thought right now. You got the little one up, so
yeah, I'm going to be a little bit
and-
distracted for a while, so I think we should call it a night. And if you want to if you want to make it a part 2, we can tomorrow. I don't. Yeah, I have more free time.
All right, awesome. Okay, thanks for joining on short notice, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks.